So my name is Rona Mackenzie. I have the pleasure of being a leadership development consultant. I've spent 20 years working in education, working in secondary schools, from being a teacher who loved to play sport through to being a founding principal of a secondary school college. And then since then, I've dabbled in luxury jewellery and cybersecurity before joining the world of leadership development. I feel like I came back to where I should be, where my heart is. And so I spend my time now traveling the world, helping people to develop their leadership behaviours, and also particularly with a focus on younger people. So how do we help kind of young teenagers and early 20s accelerate their kind of journey, rather than waiting till they get a job as a leader and then realising maybe they should have a think about it. So I was running in Oxford one morning before a programme, listening to a podcast about effective leadership. And the podcast was talking about authenticity and how the most important quality was to be authentic. And at the time, I was understanding that to be, you kind of can show up as you are and it doesn't matter, just be who you are, which I didn't agree with. And so I spent much of the run disagreeing with the podcast host and he talked about particular books and articles. And so when I got back to my hotel, I started to read about them, because all I could think about was, I've worked with some leaders who've been amazing, and I've worked with leaders who have big gaps in their kind of leadership behaviours. And it's not, in my world, it's not acceptable to just say, oh, but it's me. Our job as leaders is to understand ourselves more richly and consider how we show up with different people at different times, and how we might be more effectively ourselves, be our best selves. And so that got me started. And I kept saying, it depends. It always depends. My mum would say, this is one of her phrases, it kind of always depends on who you are, where you are, who you're with, what you're doing in such a volatile world. But it took me back to, it was always about character. And I got a bit obsessed with the fact that everything I was reading in the press was actually about a decision made from their character and their values and their virtues. It wasn't about their leadership behaviours as such. It was all underpinned by the people we are. And I started on this mantra of, but you need to know who you are first. You need to understand how people see you and how you show up, and interrogate that more richly, and then think about how you are as a partner and as a follower and then as a leader. It's too simplistic to say we need to be better communicators, or we need to be, the kind of very practical, functional things. When I started, I just simply wanted to learn a bit more about the framework and what the descriptors were, and how I could understand what that looked like in terms of kind of tangible behaviours. And what I then started to realise is it's the deepest dive into yourself. It's like being on one of those fairgrounds with all the mirrors around you, and everywhere I look every day, it's just I'm so much more aware constantly of whatever we're focusing on, how that's showing up in my life. And so after the first month, I realised that it is quite a challenging journey, because if you're prepared to go there, you open yourself up to real interrogation of who you are and how you behave. And so if I think back to where I started and my judgment of myself, I would say I'll now look like I've got worse because I've become more aware before I can get, inverted commas, better, more aware, I would say, and probably more flexible in how I behave. And so I feel like now I'm aware that what I want to do is, in that kind of stimulus response, build a bigger gap more regularly for the time and space to consider how I'm being and how I'm showing up and the impact I'm having and what I might choose to do. And the bigger that gap is, the better choices I can make. And I've found really interesting, it's like what creates the gap for me and where is there no gap, and kind of being really curious as to why has that happened? Why did I respond so quickly now when I might not have done before? What's caused that? So at the end of this, I feel like I'll have shone lots of lights on me and who I am, and I'm hoping to build a bigger gap to be able to respond in a more meaningful way, so that I am back to that authentic piece. I'm a better version of me moving forwards. That's the plan. I had a month whereby my patience was being tested on a constant basis. And I think what really helped me was the fact that that was the focus, and it was something I needed desperately to have a lot of. And so it gave me the headspace to focus on just that. And so I was kind of self-evaluating every day. Where am I today, and how have I shown up as being patient and considered and thoughtful, and whose needs have I put first, and has that been the right thing to do in this circumstance? So sometimes that's really helpful, because I have given more patience to a person or a group against another, and I can kind of justify that reasoning, but also be curious about doing that, kind of put yourself in different seats. How might that feel to that person? How might it feel for those people? And be really considered. So it felt like I was able to be much more effective in what I was doing, because on a constant daily basis I was reflecting on how are we all feeling, and are we heading in the right direction? Are people getting what they need? And it gave me a nudge to ask people, and also at times apologise. I noticed that I lacked patience at one point for a particular group of people, and it felt really unfair. And so I can call myself out and say, this is what I've experienced of me. I'm curious to see how it felt for you. And that helped to gauge whether what I was sensing was what others were receiving, because I noticed there can be a mismatch. My ability to be so hard on myself meant that I was kind of, crucifying myself, and other people were saying it wasn't that bad, we were in a different place. So that really helped. And it also helped me to consider how I show up differently at home against at work. Because quite literally, I'd been my most patient self for nearly 3 weeks, and I got home and I was impatient within about 3 seconds of opening the front door. I'm like, wow, how did that happen? And was so shocked by my own behaviour, but in a place where I could then do something. And I think that's the really important bit. It's not just that through the programme we're considering how we're being, but we also have strategies to think about, and what might we do next. And without those strategies, I think you'd be left floundering and wondering how, and that would probably be far more bruising. Whereas I feel like I'm empowered to know I've learned this about me, and now I'm ready to either ask questions or to share thoughts or do something differently, and do it in a meaningful and purposeful way, rather than kind of feeling around in the dark wondering what I might do next. So it feels like really intense therapy in a good way. I really enjoy it. And there are times I'm like, now I'm exhausted by myself, I need to just stop for a minute and not think about how I showed up. But it came at the right time. And then I say that, I wonder if every month would have been the right time, but particularly it felt really meaningful then. And it's definitely helped me, both at work and at home, to learn a lot about how I am, and then what I want to hang on to, and what we do the stop, start, continue in our work. So which of these behaviours am I happy to continue with, and what might I stop or start? And that's a nice way not to place judgment on me, but just to see what happens next. Actually, the continuums that you position are the piece I found the most helpful. And I think without that range, it's really difficult to work out what it means. And so it feels like there's a great opportunity to think about young people and giving them the opportunity to feel like some special needs was one of my areas of expertise. And I'd always say, when we talk about Asperger's, when we talk about ADHD, we talk about any different types of need, they're all on a continuum. And I think we're all on that continuum somewhere. It's just, where are we? And I feel like with the character, being able to appreciate the continuum helps you to consider where you move to at different times in different places and so on. I really enjoy the kind of scene setting, so considering our focus for the month and then digging into some of the theory. But I also appreciate the fact that the theory is kind of an enabling piece of theory, but then that's brought to life in lots of different ways. Because I've been learning that my reminders on my phone that are pictures or words or quotes, and the bits of music or the video clips are really meaningful for me, far more so than the words. And so it's helping me consider, when I talk to other people about this, what do I offer them that they might find equally meaningful and they can tap into. So that kind of almost looking at it from different directions really helps me to dig a bit deeper into what does it mean, and brings it to life, particularly those video clips. And even when they don't quite work for me, it means I know why they don't work, and that's just as valuable as when they do work. And it taught me that when I'm trying to design work with others, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to promote a bit of thinking, whichever way that goes. But then the conversations are really interesting, because then we take whatever we're focusing on, fairness, and drop it into the life of someone else in the group, and you start to see it come alive in entirely different ways. And I really like that part, because it brings it to life in a whole new way, where I'm often kind of sitting there thinking, I never thought about it like that. So, or I've not seen it kind of in that way. So yeah, I wish that they could be more and they could be longer, because I really enjoy them. Oh, it's everywhere. And I think that's the both exciting part and the frustrating bit, because I want to do everything yesterday. Because in the world of leadership development, some people might get stuck actually looking at management skills rather than leadership behaviours, or they're looking at leadership strategies, and it becomes quite formulaic, and it's a process for doing something. And it just helped me realise that at the end of the day, you can learn how to chair a meeting, but it's the character of your character that will impact on how you actually chair that meeting and how it feels for you and for the people around you. And so it is underpinning everything. And for me, if you went to the centre of the onion, your understanding of yourself and your character and how you show up and how you're evolving over time. Because I've always said that leadership development is a lifelong journey from the minute you're born till the minute you aren't no longer on this earth, and constantly we iterate and grow and develop our awareness and our skills and behaviours. But in there, the character piece has got to come first. And so at the moment, I'm looking at where do we start as a company with the work that we do, and how do we integrate it there so it's meaningful. And I think the thing I find the hardest is it's so enormous that where do you start? How do you make it accessible and manageable and kind of iterative and developmental when not overwhelm people? Because you want to do like small and thin golden thread of character alongside many other things. So it's the weaving piece that I find really interesting. And how do we do that? So I'm kind of coming with a real open mind for what it might look like, but then this sense of hurry up, because I'd like to do it straight away, and I know I can't because I don't know enough yet. So it's about building those two. But I see it as being as instrumental in everything we do, and particularly in schools. I've been talking to a number of schools in the Middle East who are opening lots of new schools, and saying, before you start asking your schools to pick the values that they will hold or the behaviours that they will think are most important, actually there's some work to do first to consider, how do we want people to show up in our organisations or our schools? How do you want their behaviour to be purposeful and have a positive impact? And how are they going to know if they're doing that, how they're showing up every day? So yeah, trying to find ways to get in with almost new starters so they can embed that from the beginning, and then consider in our existing programs, where do we weave that in a meaningful way? So yeah, it's massive, but I feel like this, for me, I'm 50 in January, and it feels like this is what I want to do for the rest of my career. I've got probably 20 years to go. So I'd just like to do this and nothing else. And in the past, I've been very kind of, I'm always a bit like, there's another new thing and there's something else to learn about, and I'm in a rush to learn everything. And now I just feel like I've centered on, this is the one thing I think could make the biggest difference. And in the work we do, we talk about being purposeful and making a difference, a measurable and valuable difference for others. And this feels like the thing. So yeah, that's where I'm planning on sticking my feet firmly and not being swayed by other things as much as possible. I think I would want to urge people to consider what character means to them and what they know, and just be a little bit curious, to spend 15 minutes having a read and having a think, and seeing if this is something that they feel like they could start to kind of embark on in their journey of self-awareness. And particularly because I feel like the younger generations now are already signed up to this. the bit, and the older we become, the more we think that younger generations are being introspective and, navel gazing, and it's not adding value. And I completely disagree. The young people I'm currently working with on a board, I'm bringing young people into the full board who are sort of 18, 19, because their self-awareness and their ability to be kindly critical and developmental in their approach to their lives is really impressive. And I think as we get older, we almost think like we are who we are and that's it, whereas actually we don't know who we are. So yeah, I'd love for people to just engage with some reading and have a bit of a thought around who they are and how they show up, and be kind of curious and see where it takes them. Because I don't think it matters whether you go all in or kind of slow and steady for 30, 40, 50 years. It's just going there, and go there with someone you trust, so that you've got a friend to support you through the conversations. Because I know that our conversations add the most value. So having someone to share that with would be would be a good thing, I think. I think I would actually follow you and Mary and the centre on LinkedIn and look at the regular posts, because they are a really nice bite-sized way in, and they always lead to somewhere, whether it be an article or a video or something. And I just feel like everything in the world, there'll be a moment where one of those posts really resonates and feels most meaningful, and that's the one to start with and follow. So I was a bit of a trust of, if it doesn't feel quite right, it's not right now, but there'll be a time when it is right. And I think that's a nice way to get started. And then, of course, the people that comment on those posts are the people that are also interested, and that's where you find your friends. So yeah, I find LinkedIn useful for that. I'm always curious to see who shows up and what they say, what they share, and where it takes me. So yeah, that would be a good place to